All right, folks, welcome to our Applied Behavioral Analysis Virtual Information session here at Johns Hopkins School of Education. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions here at the School of Ed. And yeah, we're really excited to have you this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and get started just with kind of a few things before I turn it over to Dr. Martyr. I'll talk a little bit about the Johns Hopkins School of Education, just a general overview. At that point, I'll have Dr. Martyr kind of introduce herself, and then she'll go in and talk about the ABA program. And I'll return at the end to talk about admission requirements, financial aid, and scholarship information. So as we kind of go through today's presentation, if you do have questions, feel free to use the Q&A function on Zoom, and we should have plenty of time at the end of tonight's webinar to get to them individually. If you do have kind of a more personal question, feel free to also reach out to us after today's webinar, and we're more than happy to have separate conversations. But I'll go ahead and get started. So just a little bit about the Johns Hopkins School of Education. We're one of 9 schools within Johns Hopkins University. Our total enrollment here at the School of Ed is approximately 1,164 students. And you will see our portfolio of graduate degrees. We cover 10 master degree programs, including the special ed in ABA severe disabilities, 2 doctoral programs, and 2 graduate certificates, one which we'll be talking about this evening. And then we have 109 full-time faculty. Our alumni is constantly growing at 27,000, and we're ranked in the top 20 best education schools by the U.S. News and World in Report. And actually, I think now we're at 13, which is also really good news. The other piece in terms of our student body, and it's going to depend on program, but this is for the School of Education as a whole. We cover, 42 states, including DC, Puerto Rico, and then we also have students from across the globe, so 58 countries of different citizenship. A lot of our students, are a good portion, as you can see there, are first-gen students at 32%, and then 30% are international students. Now, across our portfolio of programs, some of our programs are fully in person, others are online, and as you will find out in today's presentation, the MS in Special Education ABA Severe Disabilities will be fully online for the fall of 2026. But if you are curious about other programs, they can differ. So that's a little bit about the School of Education. We just recently relocated. I guess maybe I don't know if that's the right word to say, but we returned to the School of Education building on North Charles Street here in Baltimore, Maryland, and it's really exciting. It's a really beautiful building. So even though this program is online, if students or prospective students, or if you are already admitted and want to kind of peek through, just definitely let us know, and more than happy to accommodate any tours. Even if it's an online program, you still have access to the entire campus, and especially the School of Education building. But that's just my plug in there. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Martyr, and I'll let her introduce herself, and then she'll go into the program.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. As Eliel said, my name is Dr. Tamara Martyr, and I am the program director for our ABA programs, along with our special education programs. And you see on the slide here both Dr. Shelton and Dr. Cruz, who are faculty within our special ed program. You've all are interested in our programs because you're interested in ABA. So I'd like to start off our info sessions with talking about what is applied behavior analysis. And hopefully you are aware of applied behavior analysis. That's why you're interested in looking into a graduate program in this field. When we are talking about applied behavior analysis, we are talking about the scientific study of the principles of human behavior. Why do people do what they do? And applied behavior analysis is a systematic approach. It's a science for applying these principles of learning to improve socially important behavior for all individuals. So it's not just a bunch of strategies. We are really looking at how do we understand human behavior through these principles of learning, and how might we make changes or behavior change programs to improve those behaviors that are important to humans' lives every day. The board certified behavior analyst credential, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, is a graduate level certification in behavior analysis. So we see behavior analysts working in a variety of educational settings and in a variety of roles. So if we think about some of the educational settings, we're thinking about K through 12, public schools as well as private schools, um, center-based programs, home-based programs, school consultation agencies. So we do see a variety of educational settings in which BCBAs are employed. When we think about the roles in those settings, it can really vary. I've seen BCBAs in school settings, school-based settings, working in working as behavior specialists, as teachers, as special educators, speech and language pathologists. We also see different roles of school psychologists, program coordinators, home therapists, if we're thinking about home-based programs, and administrators. So there are a lot of different roles that BCBAs can play within an educational setting when they are practicing the science of ABA. On our next slide, we think about all of the different tasks that a behavior analyst can do, the types of services that they can provide. And that's anything from conducting behavioral assessments to implementing intervention plans, behavior change programs. Data is a big one. We had class last night and we really talked about data collection at a different level as data literacy. So, analyzing data and making data-based decisions is incredibly important, an important task that behavior analysts engage in. Writing and revising those intervention plans that are written, training others to implement those plans or components of those plans, overseeing the implementation of any behavior change program, as well as the content from our applied behavior analysis sixth edition test content outline. So these are some of the services and the activities that behavior analysts engage in these different settings, as well as in these different roles. So before we start talking about what the program provides, it's really important to know when you're thinking about graduate school, where will I be once I graduate graduate school? I know it seems a little like, wait, I just want to get in, but you also need to be thinking about what opportunities are there for me in the field once I graduate from a program that enables me to become board certified. We are seeing an annual demand for behavior analyst jobs increasing every single year. So we've seen this growth since 2010 when the BACB started collecting that data. And from that should be from 2024 to 2025, we've seen a 28% increase across the country. The demand was highest in the following states in California, New Jersey, Texas, Massachusetts, and North Carolina. And in Maryland, we saw a 57% increase. So there's a high demand for professionals who have this credential. So going through a program like ours will set you up to have the opportunity to have lots of different opportunities for jobs. So if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, I'm going to talk to you first about the certification, the requirements to become board certified. First, you must have a master's degree. You must also complete ABA coursework. So if you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you have to complete that fieldwork experience. We're going to talk about that shortly. And then once you have all three, you can apply to the BACB and then they can let you know, yep, you can sit for the exam. And once you pass the exam, this is a very big exam. I'm sure you've all heard about it. Then you can become a board certified behavior analyst. So we have two programs here at Johns Hopkins that enables our graduates to become board certified. We have our master's in special education in ABA. So we have in this program, we have 7 ABA courses, which are 21 credits. We also have an additional 5 special education courses, which is an additional 15 credits. So those 36 credits make up a master's degree in special ed with an emphasis in applied behavior analysis. We also have the opportunity for our students to get those fieldwork hours, that third circle, through our practicum electives. It's really important to point out that these are electives. That does mean that students do not have to enroll in those courses in order to graduate with a master's degree. But if you want to become if you want to become eligible to apply to the BACB to become board certified, you do need to have those fieldwork hours completed. And so we oftentimes will have students who will roll in our practicum courses to get those fieldwork hours. Or we also have individuals who will do the supervision on their own. So maybe they'll hire their own supervisor and choose not to enroll in our courses in our practicum electives. Sometimes students of ours will work in places where BCBAs are also employed, and so there's a supervision model set up within their place of employment. And so oftentimes there's really no reason for them to go through our practicum courses as long as they're getting those fieldwork hours. Our master's in special ed can be completed in 2 years. Courses are offered in the fall, spring, and summer. And then if students are enrolling in the fieldwork experience, the practicum to complete the fieldwork experience, then that would include an optional third year, so that your program would be 3 years long. Our postmaster's certificate includes the same 7 ABA courses. Students are coming in already with their master's degree, so they don't need to get that master's degree. They've already completed that first circle. And now they want to get all the ABA coursework. So they can take our ABA courses. And just like the master's program, they don't have to, students in the postmaster's don't have to take the practicum electives. It is an elective, it is not required to graduate from our program. And this program is also completed in 2 years with courses being taken in the fall and spring semester. There are no courses in the summer for the postmaster's certificate. So one thing to note about these two programs is that everybody is taking, folks in the postmaster's certificate and students in the master's program all take their ABA courses together. This is kind of what we call a cohort model because you're going through all of the courses together with a group of students that you came into the program with. So if you all apply to this program, you get accepted into this program, you start in the fall, you will all be in the same courses with all the same students throughout your time here at Hopkins. This is a great opportunity for students to be able to learn from others because you're going to have students with lots of different backgrounds, peers with lots of different backgrounds coming into this program, but it also creates these natural study groups while you're in the program and then when you graduate and are preparing for the exam. A big important aspect of any ABA program is how do we align with the BACB requirements? So we now have, according to the BACB, we have two pathways starting in 2027 to become board certified. So anybody coming into our program now would be applying through one of those two pathways. The only way to apply if you've graduated from our program is through pathway two. So our program has all of its coursework revised already, learning objectives that adhere to these updated requirements that are the 2027 BCBA Pathway 2 requirements, coursework requirements, which ensures alignment with the revised content areas, if you're familiar with the content areas that the BACB requires for coursework. It's 315 hours of coursework. So I do recommend checking out the BACB March 2022 newsletter, which provides a lot of information about these upcoming pathways and how to become certified. So thinking about our program format, I did not say this before, but most of our courses are offered in the evenings. All of our courses, I don't know why I said most, all of our courses are offered in the evenings from about 6 to 9 p.m. They're offered, you will take courses twice a week. So let's say like a Monday and then a Wednesday. And the courses are really designed for the working professional. So the majority of our students do work full time and then they go to school part time by taking two classes a semester. Um, the program cannot go any faster than two courses a semester. The courses are pretty intensive, so I wouldn't recommend anybody taking more than two of these courses because it is an intensive graduate program. Again, as Eliel was talking a little bit about when we got started today, our ABA courses are all offered synchronously online. So actually, it's kind of like what we're doing today, where we all kind of Zoom into class together, and it's fully synchronously online. So as it's happening. Our special ed courses in the master's program Some of the courses are synchronous, just like this, and some are asynchronous. So you're logging in, you're following through on Canvas, which is our learning management system, and you go week by week with the content. Again, master's program is fall, spring, and summer, and the postmaster's is fall and spring. Here are some of our learning outcomes for the program. Students who are coming out of our program are able to define, demonstrate, and apply the principles of behavior analysis. They can use research methods to evaluate and measure the effectiveness of their programming, being able to design and implement and evaluate instructional programs, as well as behavior reduction programs. Defining and practicing according to the ethics code, implementing, managing, and practicing behavior analysis in an educational setting. Our students pass the exam. So that's another big learning outcome. Our final learning outcome is being able to pass that BCBA exam. So let's take a few seconds to talk about the practicum electives. Like I said, these are not mandatory to graduate from our program. You can choose, you can elect to enroll in these courses, and they are designed to meet the fieldwork experience requirements for concentrated fieldwork. So if you're familiar with the fieldwork experiences, you know that the concentrated fieldwork requires 1,500 hours of fieldwork experience. 10% of those hours are supervised. And across a 15-week semester, our students are able to accrue 25 hours per week with 1.5 hours with an individual supervisor. We provide you with that BCBA who provides that individual supervision once a week. And then also as part of the course, you get supervision through group supervision for 1 hour. It's like a class meeting. So when we do that, we look across a 15-week semester. Each semester, you can earn 375 hours. You multiply that by 4, you get to your 1,500 hours. We have a practicum coordinator who helps all of our students who enroll in the practicum electives to get set up with a supervisor to ensure that their place of employment does work for that fieldwork supervision or fieldwork experience. If it does not, then we work with our students to ensure that they do have a placement to complete their fieldwork. One of those requirements, so anybody who is outside the state of Maryland or DC, one of those requirements is that in order to complete the practicum electives, you must be local in the Maryland or DC area. So we train all of our BCBAs that we assign to our students during field work. And we also want our fieldwork supervisors to provide supervision in person. So we don't really do remote supervision so much. It's important for our supervisors to come out and be able to see you practice in person. Okay, this is a course sequence for the master's degree in special ed. You can see you got all of your ABA courses in the fall and spring semester. You also have the special ed courses are taken during the summer semester. You can see there's the legal aspects and the survey of autism course. This is what we call the autism track. But students don't necessarily have to take only autism classes. You can take other special ed courses as well. During the fall of the second year, if students are enrolling in the practicum courses, that's where it's added in. We do want all of our students before they start fieldwork to have the Intro to ABA course, the Research Methods course, the Ethics course, and the Behavioral Assessment course under their belt before they start their practicum, their fieldwork. According to the BACB, you can actually start your fieldwork as long as you are taking classes. So if you're enrolled in a course, you can start taking those courses. If you come to our program, you'll see that oftentimes we have the BACB requirements and then we have the Hopkins requirements, which are a little bit higher standard than the BCBA, which is the standard, right? So we want to make sure that our students have those courses before they start doing the field work, and that's an important aspect. And then in the second year of the program, if you're not taking practicum, then you'll take two ABA courses. If not, you only take one ABA course and then the practicum elective. And then that other ABA course gets pushed down to the third year when you're taking practicum 3. In the second year of the spring semester, students will take a special ed course and the practicum course. Yes. sorry, the special ed and the practicum course. If they are not taking the electives, then they would take the philosophical foundations course, take a summer course, and then graduate from the program. Our next slide outlines the postmaster certificate in ABA. And as you can see, we only have the fall and spring semester represented here because that's the only classes the only semesters you would be taking coursework with the same sort of setup with practicum one starting in the second year of the program. If anybody has questions about these specific classes, then courses, please make sure to add those into the chat when we're answering questions at the end of this info session. So once students complete all of the required coursework in the enrolled program, either the master's or the postmaster's certificate, then they can graduate and they successfully complete those courses, then they can graduate from Johns Hopkins. Students who are deciding to do the electives obviously wouldn't graduate. They do the electives with us, complete the fieldwork hours, and then they graduate from Johns Hopkins, and then they're ready to apply to the BACB to become board certified. For students who decide to do the fieldwork hours on their own, obviously they would have to get all of that paperwork and make sure that when they do apply to the BACB, they are providing their transcripts as well as all of their fieldwork hours documentation. It's really important to point out that we provide you with the transcripts that say that and the degree that say that you've completed the courses. We do not provide you with certification. It is your responsibility to apply to the BACB to become board certified. So we do not provide that certification. And also, it is expected that any student that goes through our program and graduates from our program will apply to become board certified. You cannot graduate from this program and say that you're a behavior analyst or that you're board certified. You must apply to the BACB and take that exam and pass it to become board certified. So some advantages of our program is that the focus of our program is ABA and education. So we are looking at the application of the science of ABA in a variety of educational settings. So I listed a few educational settings at the beginning of this info session. And so that's what we're really looking at. So any setting, from a home program to a K through 12 setting is educational, right? So we are really looking at how do we apply ABA in these different settings. We also are looking across different disability categories. So we are not an ABA and autism program. We're not just talking about how do you apply or how to use ABA to help students with autism. We are looking across a variety of disability categories. Another advantage is that students who complete our program pass the exam. That's a big advantage. The other advantages are practicum. We've talked through that. I've given you some details on the practicum. We do have a supervisor that we provide to you. We have our practicum coordinator who's the liaison between students and their practicum sites. And everybody's students who are enrolled in the practicum, it's an individualized situation. So it is individualized based on your skill level, what you're coming into, because oftentimes we have students who have lots of varied experiences that they're bringing to the program. And finally, another advantage of our program is that all of our faculty are board certified behavior analysts at the doctoral level. So they are all practicing behavior analysis every day. So some milestones, the impact of our program. Our program began with a postmaster's certificate in 2013. In 2022, we began the master's program. We've had across both programs 111 graduates representing a variety of educational professionals. We've had 11 cohorts who've completed the program, and across all those graduates of the ABA program, 88% pass the exam the first time. The BACB will share first time pass rates. We also collect our own data on that. So we look at pass rate the first time and then pass rate on a second exam. So we have a 95% pass rate overall. And then the majority of our graduates who live in Maryland go on to get licensed in the state of Maryland. And it's called a licensed behavior analyst. So many states now do have that licensure. So if you're outside the state of Maryland, you want to check out if your state does have that licensure. So, a question I often get is who's an ideal candidate for the program? First is the demonstration, the desire really to commit to the field of applied behavior analysis. If you are looking to get, a few more letters after your name, this is really not the program for you. You have to be invested in the field. Understanding the requirements to become board certified that are outlined by the BACB, this is really important. You don't have to have it memorized, but you have to understand all of the different aspects of a program like this or the requirements for becoming certified. Once you get certified, how do you keep your certification? What do you do once you graduate? The third area for that we would like to focus on for the ideal program candidate is the ability to commit 2 to 3 years of intensive graduate coursework. So, like I said, this program is quite intensive. In every single class, you will have quizzes every single week on the readings that were assigned for that week. You will have a possibly a midterm, definitely a final. You will be writing papers in every single class, a variety of different types of papers, as well as presentations. All of these are skills that are really important for BCBAs to possess, to be able to present their information, to be able to analyze their data, to be able to look at the literature and determine if that intervention is effective and how can I apply that intervention in my placement. And being able to answer all of those multiple choice questions really sets you up to be successful on that BCBA exam. Another characteristic is being able to meet the admissions requirements, which Eliel is going to talk to you about in a few minutes. And then finally, willing to work and study hard. So if you're ready to invest 2 to 3 years of intensive study in the field of ABA, then this program is definitely for you. So some next steps, like to reiterate, check out those BACB requirements. Make sure that you review them. If you review them and you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. There's my email. That's the third bullet there. That you can reach out to me at any time with a question. And then make sure to get your application started. There's the link. And I'll hand it over to Eliel, who will talk to you a little bit more about the admissions process.
Great, thank you, Dr. Martyr. And as I begin here for folks who joined us a little bit late, yeah, definitely feel free to use the Q&A. We might have some students who have already been admitted to the program for the fall of 2026. So if you are already admitted and have gone through the admissions process, if you do have questions as in terms of your next steps, feel free to also kind of include those as well. But also kind of understanding that a lot of folks are just starting their application. So I'll talk a little bit about that. So when it comes to the admissions application requirements, you'll see the slide that I have up here. It's a pretty straightforward process. Minimum GPA that we are going to be looking for is a 3.0, and that's from all your previous undergraduate and graduate coursework, depending on which program you're applying to, whether it's the master's in special ed severe disabilities or if it's a postmaster's certificate. You will want to go ahead and complete the application online. There is an $80 application fee in order to be reviewed and to submit it. We will need all official transcripts from post-secondary institutions that you've attended. There is an essay/personal statement that you do want to take some time, be authentic, right? Review this webinar, review our website, get some second eyes on it as well. And then there's also going to be a space for you to upload a resume slash CV. We will also request 2 letters of recommendation on your end. So you will do that manually through the online application. It'll ask you to upload the names and email addresses of your 2 recommenders. And then once you hit send, it'll trigger an invite to them for them to upload their letter of rec. What we would recommend when you're looking at your recommendations, right? Understanding that this program is definitely more on the applied based, right? A lot of our prospective students and candidates typically are, within at least 3 to 5 years of work experience, sometimes a little bit more. So with that understanding, when you're looking at letters of recommendation, it's perfectly fine on our end if your recommendations come from professional experiences, right? So supervisor, a colleague, someone that can speak to your ability to work within special education would be ideal. Now, if you've been able to keep a really good relationship with a faculty/professor, or maybe you did just finish your undergrad degree or your master's program, and that's fine. You can also seek out academic-based recommendations as well. Just make sure that you give those folks plenty of time to write you a good letter of rec, send them links about the program, meet with them as well, do everything that you can to assure that they're going to do the best in terms of providing you a strong letter of rec. There is an interview typically done with the special ed program faculty, typically a phone interview as you kind of go through the process, and then there is no GRE required. So again, pretty straightforward. The application is live for the fall of 2026 with the deadline being July 15th. So as we've kind of been doing these webinars, I keep saying you have plenty of time, but I think that's not so true or won't be true fairly soon. So definitely if you are thinking about the program, apply as soon as you can, submit your application, get those materials turned in. So that way you have plenty of time, hopefully with an offer of admission to decide whether or not you want to go ahead and accept and commit to the School of Education. So again, July 15th is the final deadline for all your materials and application to be completed. The other piece is that we also understand that we might have internationally educated applicants into this program as well. Uh, Typically, we don't see international students applying, but we do see students who maybe are now in the U.S. and Maryland and working in the field, but maybe got their bachelor's degree in Europe, right, or in the UK. So anytime that you have formal education, whether it's a bachelor's or certificate or a postmaster or a master's program, we will need a course by course evaluation of your academic credentials. And it needs to be from a NACES or NACES. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's NACES approved agency. If you go onto our website, education.jhu.edu/international, you will see some of our partners like WES, ECE, Tech, SpanTran. I may be forgetting a few others, but there's a whole comprehensive list of agencies that we do take a course by course evaluation from. Take a look at each of their website because they all have different price points, but also make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to get this course by course evaluation completed. From my experience, just working in the admissions office, depending on the time that you request this course by course eval from XY agency, it can take sometimes a month or 2 months for it to be completed and be sent to us. So if you're thinking about applying before July 15th, you do want to start beginning that process now. If you have any questions about this piece, because I know it can be a little bit complicated, definitely reach out to us in the admissions office. I'm more than happy to kind of have a discussion and just kind of figure out what the best way is in terms of moving forward. Now, when it comes to the cost of the program, so this program is online, as we mentioned before. So you really want to be looking at kind of the second row here for online courses. So expect per credit 1,140 plus $20 for that credit tech fee. So one course of 3 credits, you're looking at $3,480. Now, also keep in mind that this is tuition and fees for 25 to 26. So sometimes we'll see a few percentage points go up per academic year, but this is a good kind of baseline, to assess in terms of the cost of the program. There is a registration fee when it comes to registering for classes every semester of $175. And as I mentioned before, there is that $80 application fee as well. So this should give you a really good estimate in terms of what you would be looking at for the program. Now, in terms of scholarships and just financial aid, those pieces, right, you can kind of look through different funding sources. There's federal aid. So if you are eligible for the FAFSA, we would encourage you to submit that application. There is a code for Hopkins School of Ed. If you need assistance in completing that FAFSA, because it's been a few years, our office can assist with that. They do individual Zoom appointments, or if you just want to send them an email, that's easier. We do have an office, and I think in one of my final slides, I have their contact information. You may be eligible, right, for state, federal grants and scholarships. In terms of us, and I'll go into this in the next slide in terms of colleges and university scholarships. I will say, for the most part, most students are looking at either loans, potential grants, employer tuition reimbursement, and sometimes private resources. We do offer, in terms of what we call the SOE endowed scholarship pool of money, but it is a limited number and it's partial and it's need based, right? So just kind of be aware, right, in terms of what the program can offer. You really want to be looking at some of the other buckets that I had on that slide when it comes to the FAFSA, private resources, employer tuition reimbursement, I think, for this program, and then also the other Masters of Special Education program that we have. Typically, we do see more employer tuition reimbursement, sources when students are looking to kind of navigate the cost of the program. But some external resources that you can use are scholarship.com, teacher.org, right? As I mentioned before, you want to be completing the FAFSA, and then there is that potential of being reviewed for the SOE endowed scholarship. If you do want to set up a meeting, which I would strongly, strongly encourage to everyone, I do this with every student that I meet with, whether it's this program or other programs. It's to your advantage to meet with our financial aid team. They're here to help and guide you to kind of get a full understanding of what the cost will look like for this program, right? So that way, once you have an offer of admission, you'll have a better sense, right, of whether or not this is going to be a good fit for you. And you don't have to wait until you get an offer of admission to meet with either the director, Nettie, or Jenny. They have appointments throughout the week. I think right now they might be a little bit booked, but feel free to scan the QR code and kind of save that link. They should be updating it here shortly soon with more appointments. But they're there to guide you and assist you in terms of just navigating the FAFSA, navigating the cost. If you prefer a phone call, right, they can also assist with that as well. So that kind of concludes the admissions and kind of financial aid piece. So we will open it up to Q&A at this point. So folks, if you have questions specifically about the program, or if you are admitted and have questions about your next steps, definitely feel free to use this time to your advantage. And Tammy, as we're kind of waiting, if folks have questions, one of the questions I think that might help some students kind of just understand the modality, right? Online synchronous. Can you, and maybe you did this during the presentation, can you just give an overview of when typically students meet during the week? I know they typically meet in the evenings. Um, and what that kind of just looks like with the faculty kind of student relationship, right? With the understanding that a lot of these students are working professionals during the day. Oh, and you're on mute.
Thanks. Our synchronous courses are just like pretty much like taking an in-person course, just that you're logging into your computer, right? And you're joining us live. So courses are offered at the same time each week. They don't change, the schedule doesn't change. Like I teach on Monday nights from 6 to 9 p.m. So there's not a variety of times or scheduling issues. It's a set time. Um, all faculty are available to our students. So if you have questions or you want to meet with your faculty member about feedback or you have questions about the content, you can always set up times with them either in their office hours. I personally just say, I don't have office hours, just email me and we'll set up a meeting. Eliel, you were mentioning about our new building. I have an office there, and so I can always meet students there as well if they are local. I I'm gonna add on to LEL's plug. That's a really great new building that's been renovated. So a lot of our students will use that study space. It is definitely very helpful. Um, the other piece for the asynchronous classes, those are really more you're independently working through the content each week. Some faculty do have the opportunity to meet on a biweekly or once a month. Um, frequency. So like I know I teach an online course in the summer, an asynchronous online course in the summer, and I set up times where students can come together and meet with me. It's kind of like office hours where we go over the assignments and answer any content questions. So those are the two. And so the asynchronous you do at your own time. You know, you decide when you're going to do it. There is content each week. So you can't get behind on the content, right? Things are due at a certain time. Whereas a synchronous, you know, it is a schedule just like you would have with an in-person class or a face-to-face class.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Marto. So I'll read one of the questions that we came out here, and you should be able to see it as well. But so someone's asking, right? You mentioned, I think, in one of our slides, how a psychologist is a possible career. Is this program also good for someone planning to go into clinical psychology or a PhD in clinical psychology program after the BCBA certification?
Yeah, we've had students do that. So they've gotten their master's degree with us. They are board certified. It's a great way to make some money while you continue on to graduate school for sure. So we do have students who have done that, have gotten their master's degree and then go on to get a doctorate in psychology or in ABA. Really just depends on the degree that they're interested in. What courses sort of transfer, or if our courses transfer, that's something that you have to talk with the doctoral program that you're applying to about. But you know, we do have a research methodology course that a single subject design that could always count for something. So it really just depends on the program that you're applying to. But we have seen that, and we have students who go on to get their doctorate.
And I know, like, for a lot of our programs, Dr. Martyr, like I'm thinking about the MS in counseling, right? Like within the School of Ed, we don't really offer, obviously, like research assistantships. I'm assuming that's the same for special ed. But for students who are looking maybe to advance their career after a program like this, you do have access to the entire university as a whole.
Yeah.
So one of the resources that I often share with other programs is Smile. Which is the university platform. I put the link, well, I put it to just the panelists, but let me send that to everyone. Um, but I put the link there. It's called Smile. If you Google Smile Johns Hopkins, it'll come up. If you're not a student with us yet, it's not really going to serve you much other than just kind of seeing what it's about. But once you're admitted and accepted and enrolled, you would have access to Smile. You'd be able to log in and you'd be able to see all types of kind of paid employment opportunities, whether that's research or just other opportunities that you might have that are offered within the ecosystem at Hopkins. So that's another really good resource that I think a lot of people don't think about once they're admitted into the program.
Yeah, another really kind of cool thing too to add on to that, LAL, is that we have a lot of faculty who have relationships with other faculty in other schools. You know, when I had a student that was really interested in being a research assistant in the summer, and we didn't have a research project for her to work on, but I connected her with some people at the School of Public Health, or I think I got an email about somebody at the School of Public Health was looking for a data entry position, you know, looking to fill a data entry position for research. And so we were able to connect the ABA student with the School of Public Health. So, you know, we do have a lot of relationships across the board, and our faculty, all, you know, a lot of our faculty work at Kennedy Krieger Institute, which is part of Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. So we have a lot of crossover. So when opportunities arise, if students are interested, all they have to do is say the word. And so when we see opportunities, we then share it with our students.
So another question that came in is how important is work experience in your application? If you only recently received your bachelor's degree, what experiences are considered best to do before applying?
That is a great question, Ty. You know, everything is important, right? When we're looking at your work experience and we're looking at the references, but they're all balanced out, right? So you may not have, you know, if you've just graduated from your bachelor's, of course, it's understandable that you may not have a lot of work experience. But what, you know, did you work as a research assistant? Did you work with a faculty member? You know, talking about those experiences in your personal statement is always an important aspect. But it's not the only thing that we look at. The other part of the question was, let me see, hold on. Um, what experiences are considered best to do before applying? So I think that's a good question. If you are interested in the field of ABA, are you familiar? Do you know somebody who's a BCBA? Can you shadow them for a couple of days to see what they do? Looking at the different settings that they work in, if it's a home-based program or a center-based program or a school-based program. Um, a lot of our students are registered behavior technicians before they come to our program. Sometimes that's really great experience. So there's a variety of different opportunities. So, Ty, if you want to discuss that further with me, if you're looking for experiences, do feel free to email me. Um, and we can set up a time to talk about, what experiences you're thinking about. Um, and I can help you with that.
It doesn't look like we have any more questions. I'll give folks a few more seconds here to, oh, wait, there you go. Okay, so we have an individual who completed their ABA technician course from Kenya, and they did it with the United States International University in Africa. So they're going to sit in their exams, but they just received their certification for the first three-step training. Wanting to inquire if it's possible to apply for the master's program at Johns Hopkins. Is it possible to discuss this further? So yeah, no, that's a really good question. That's probably one that maybe we should kind of make some time separately and just have a discussion of what this looks like. But real briefly here, anytime that you have uh, a degree, right, completed outside of the US, we are going to have to require a course by course evaluation of your bachelor's degree program. It does have to be equivalent to a US bachelor's degree. So once that evaluation is complete, it needs to say this degree, right, is equivalent to a US bachelor's degree of 120 credits. So until, right, we get confirmation of that it's equivalent to 120 credits, I would hold off on submitting a complete application. If you want for that person who submitted that question, my email address is there. I do individual appointments. I have some time, I think tomorrow still available. So maybe I'll do that too. I'll drop my appointment link here in a bit. But yeah, it might be good just to have kind of a further conversation of what your past education has looked like, right? And how that could translate over when you do a course by course evaluation. Because I had seen sometimes where it's not equivalent to 120 credits. And in those cases, unfortunately, other than that applicant going on and taking additional courses before they apply, there isn't really much that we can do. But I'll include my appointment calendar here in a bit. So hopefully that gives some clarity there. Yeah, I'm just getting the link. And Dr. Martyr, I mean, I know we just transitioned to this program online, but for a student who may be, and I'm not sure that one student would be completing this degree outside of the US. But if we do have students who are international, right, and obviously won't like we can't support an F1 since it's part-time online, but if they did want to complete the degree in their home country, can you just talk a little bit about your thoughts about that? Just because it is very specific, right, to the state of
Yeah.
Maryland in terms of certification. And I think that's a piece that I haven't really had too many conversations with international students yet in terms of applying to this program, but that's always in the back of my head, right? Of how much
Yeah.
does this really serve you if you're located in another country?
Well, there's two things to talk about there. One is certification. So board certification behavior analysis is a North American certification, right? So BCBAs would there aren't, there used to be BCBAs in other countries and it was recognized, but then the BACB stepped back from accrediting that certification in other countries, and they would have to go through their own accreditation process, right? Those countries would have to do that. So that's one thing. If you're thinking about becoming board certified, and you're outside of the US, you'd have to know what the requirements are for your country to become certified. So this program would only allow you to become certified in the US. The other piece is if you're doing, and the expectation is students who go through a program will become board certified. The other piece is that, if you're in a different time zone, you have to make sure that you can attend classes when we offer them because our courses are synchronous. So knowing that we are, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you would be required, to make sure that you can attend class at that time because you have to be at class to learn from class. So that's an important aspect as well. And I think that's it. Those are the two main items to be thinking about.
Okay. So I went ahead and put my appointments for Zoom for me. Just a disclaimer, I think tomorrow is really my only day open for this week. Friday, we have the grand reopening, so we will all be there. But I should be putting more appointments for the next following week and going into the month of May. So feel free to just save that link. And if you want to revisit it, at some point tomorrow, you should see some more appointments for the following week. And then I also did include in the chat box our direct link for international educated students, right, when they're looking at course by course evaluations and other credentials that you could possibly also be requested. But yeah, I think, yeah, that I think covers, I don't see any other questions. Thanks everyone for taking some time this afternoon and learning about the ABA program, both the master's and the postmaster's certificate. If you have any questions, feel free to send an email directly to admissions, or you can also reach out to Dr. Martyr. We'll have more sessions as we kind of go into May, June, and I don't know if we're doing one in July, but May and June for sure. So feel free to revisit these if you have additional questions. I'll be sending out the recording. Typically takes about a week for it to be processed, so just keep an eye on your email for that. But other than that, everyone enjoy the rest of your afternoon.